What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Contents of This Package show. We're in episode 13, talking about the brand new sample pack session tapes, which dropped yesterday. I'm here with the executive producer and my good friend and guest, John Smythe. Smythe, how you doing, bro?
Doing good, man. How are you?
Doing good, man. Really excited to talk about this project. I know folks that are listening are probably wondering where the last two episodes for Somber Soul and Solstice went. Trust me, those are on the way. We got you covered, but we wanted to hop right into episode 13, talk about session tapes, and we'll get Solstice and Somber Soul to you guys like ASAP. But really excited about this project. I kind of felt like this project was going in a bit of a different direction than where we've been going recently. It's a lot more acoustic temperament throughout the whole pack, which is something that we do rarely, I guess would be a good word. It feels like we only do acoustic stuff maybe once like every other quarter. And even if we do it, it doesn't really necessarily always feel like it's the main theme in the pack.
Right.
Yeah, man. So, would love to hear, just some of the background and, even just how you formulated this, because unlike some of the other ones too, this one you actually kind of did on your own and then brought it to me and was like, hey man, I got this pack done. What do you think about, maybe doing this and this and that? So we'd love to hear like even just like sound wise, where you were gaining inspiration from and, how you went about doing this.
Yeah. So pretty much the concept behind this one, I really wanted to do a pack that was, I guess, dry for lack of a better word. That didn't really have too much reverb, didn't really have a lot of synthesizers, and really just not over processed. And I don't think we really over process, depending on which pack it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, for anybody who has recorded at a big studio, the feeling of doing a session, and then after you finish the session, you get a demo and everything is really dry and you get to hear exactly what was recorded and you hear the music for what it is. That's kind of like when you determine if a song is good or not.
Right, right.
You should know beforehand, but you really get to hear the song not as you hear it in your head, but for what it actually is.
Sure.
And
I know that's one thing that we've tried to be a little more dry, so to say, in a lot of our offerings, just because we've been getting a decent amount of feedback from people, wanting to get some dry stuff. So this is actually one of the big packs. This is over a gig of sounds. You have both the dry and the regular wet version. That does have a bit of reverb and different type of processing techniques in that. What were your go-tos as far as like hardware in this particular pack?
Yeah, so as far as hardware, pretty much the same kind of stuff. As far as the bass processing, on the 1073, I kind of jacked up the input a little bit more and backed off the output. So the input
now why would you do that in particular?
So that, especially on a 1073, is going to give you a little bit of breakup. It's going to give you some more clarity, believe it or not. I would say in the mid-range. And I'm using flat wound, so there's really not a lot of high end on the bass tone anyway, but a little bit of breakup and overdrive is going to help it cut through.
Okay.
I used the 2 preamp for the pianet. And on the guitar, the nylon string and the acoustic. I believe that was just the preamps from the Apollo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like stylistically, what would you say genre-wise that this fits in? I mean, obviously we always do soul, but I was even kind of getting like a little bit of pop vibes in this, in a couple joints, couple up-tempo joints that we kind of don't normally do. I think it was like Melodic Loop, like number 5 or 6, was really up-tempo. It sounded more like something that you would actually produce for your own production.
Right.
And I was really glad to hear something like that, because it was kind of kind of a bit of a change up, kind of felt like it came out of left field in a way. Do you think that that's something that is something that we can look forward to in the future with maybe doing something like that for other producers?
Yeah, so I think I know exactly which one you're talking about too. I think it's Melodic Loop 4, where there's like a steady, I guess, eighth note piano kind of thing.
Yeah.
And a lead guitar. Yeah, I think I would categorize session tapes. It's sort of the space between, how do you put it? I would say 70s soul and the Doobie Brothers. It's
because I definitely, that's what I was saying. Like Doobie Brothers, depending on who you're talking to, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, that's definitely soul." But then there's some people that are like, it's not really soul at all.
Right.
And I felt like that this pack felt like the most commercial version of soul that we've done up until this point. You know what I'm saying? I feel like what we've done so far has been what you would consider, I'm not trying to get political or anything, but black soul. And then, this particular pack kind of felt like more of like a universal soul, a soul that pretty much anybody can get into. Has the spirit of R&B while also having a little bit of movement that kind of goes into this area where it's falling in between like R&B and pop, at the same time.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think what really helped with that was, I played piano on the first, I would say maybe half of these loops. And of course on piano, I'm just a little bit more basic, and I use the guitar and the pianet and everything around it to build it up. But the bass of the first few loops, they're piano, so they're going to be a little bit more accessible. They're not going to be as fancy or harmonically, complex or anything like that.
Right. But I think even kind of going back and looking into what the folks that buy our stuff, what they're into more and more, like, we had a company-wide meeting. Well, actually, technically it wasn't company-wide. I had a conversation with John and Joel, and then I had another conversation with you, basically just detailing from a data standpoint some of the things that were working and some of the things that, I don't want to say they're not working, but they weren't grabbing the attention of our customers as much. The one thing that I noticed, especially this year, was how much the minimal version of what we do seemed to lend to people wanting to buy. And I think it has something to do with the fact that it's a little bit more flippable. I think it's easier to technically insert into a production, or easier to jumpstart people's production. And I think that we've been on a really good wave for, like, I want to say 4 to 5 sample packs in a row where we really went that minimal route. So I actually think that it's beneficial in that you can't play the piano like Joel. Right. You know what I mean? Because you're just basically allowing us to have the structure of the chord minus the intricacies of, leads in between chords and, and sometimes, like, again, it's good to have that stuff, from time to time, but I don't know if it lends itself as much to sample pack creation as maybe you or me playing piano, on a pack.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think there's definitely magic in limitations. They say, I don't know if this applies, but necessity is the mother of invention. And, I guess literally it was necessary for me to really make the piano work, but it just allowed me to go to different places. And I'm still discovering those places. I feel, like I told you how I felt about the first half in a conversation we had yesterday about the first half of these loops. And I was honestly a little bit iffy on it, but I've been listening to it since it dropped. And I do feel good about it. And I think it's pretty different. And it's, I think another good example, it just reminds me of listening to early Neptunes. You know, Pharrell is an amazing musician,
right?
But you can hear his limitations in the things that he plays, especially with the early Neptunes. You know, those sounds and some of the chords, they're very blocky, but it just created a vibe that, you know, I view it as classic music now, you know?
Right. Do you think that's the same allure that Tyler has now? Because I feel like he kind of falls into that same category of like not necessarily being like the greatest musician, you know?
Was that a pun? You remember Allure? The John F. Pharrell did for
yeah. Absolutely not. I'm just smart like that. You know what I'm saying? It just happened naturally. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm just joking. No, but no, I think that it's the same reason why Tyler is so well loved and appreciated across the board, because again, it's that same thing of what we've been saying going back to the Doobie Brothers. It's like this is more easily digested across the board by a wider audience than say, you know, a John Coltrane record, which is amazing, but can anybody really play the sax like John Coltrane? Absolutely not. He's literally the only person that can play it like that. But can I play piano like Tyler? Definitely. Can I play keys like Pharrell? Absolutely. You know, so you give us hope, man. You give us hope.
Yeah, wow. No, I think it's a great comparison. You know, I honestly don't think that Tyler's music would hit the same if he could play exactly what he hears in his head.
Oh yeah, yep.
It would just be different. And I really think that even just conceptually, those limitations really help, because when you can't play certain things, you don't hear those things all the time. You know, unless you know how to do exactly what Joel does. You know, there are certain things that he does that you would never even think to do.
Right.
But I think it also just creates another alternative way or an alternative result for the music that just makes it really different. So so yeah, no, that's I didn't even think about that, but that's really true with Tyler.
Yeah. Do you think it also leads to being, I kind of feel like that music is better produced too. And maybe is the reason why a lot of musicians that are really, really gifted are not really great producers.
I see what you're saying.
They're so over leveraged in the fact that they're great as musicians that it doesn't lend itself to the basic laws of good production. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you know, here's how I feel about that. And I was having this conversation with somebody like a couple weeks ago. That's true. Musicians aren't really great producers most of the time, and producers really aren't great musicians. But every once in a while, when there's someone who gets both right, it like changes music. Like you think about Prince, changes music. You think about D'Angelo,
right?
You know? Or like even I wouldn't, maybe I would put John Mayer on that. I don't know about on that same level, but because he wasn't really reinventing the wheel, but he was just the same thing. He was a great musician, or he is a great musician, and he was a great producer and songwriter. So
right,
you know, even Michael McDonald, you know, Stevie Wonder. Those are, I really feel like it's kind of easy to paint that narrative that musicians aren't great producers, but when musicians get it right, it's really, to me, in my opinion, it's the best music, but it doesn't always happen.
But it also like lends itself to the law of numbers too, you know. So if you think about it, the people that you acknowledge, I mean, they're on a different level. They're in another pantheon in comparison to the rest of us peons, you know. Yeah. So technically you're right, but I'm also right too, kind of in the same way where it's the majority of musicians reside on the lower pantheon. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then every now and again, like you said, you will get somebody like a Stevie Wonder or a John Mayer or D'Angelo, and they kind of come and just completely change everything. You know, like I remember, and I know this is a tangent. This is not what this podcast is about, but speaking of D'Angelo, I remember hearing Voodoo for the first time, and I was young. I was like 19 when Voodoo came out, and I remember at that age, you're old enough that you've heard enough music to be able to have a valued opinion, you know. But I remember thinking at that time, I've never heard anything that sounds like this, and I've heard a lot of music by that point, you know. Obviously, not just being a consumer of music, but also being a musician, somewhat of myself. Just hearing stuff like that and just really feeling like, my brain doesn't even think to do something like that, you know. So yeah, man, you're right on. But I digress. So yeah, so like we said, this is what we call the bloated pack, 1.5 gigs of sound. What particular genres do you think that the producers that buy our stuff, where do you see this residing at? Because you made mention that there was like 1 or 2 particular melodic joints that you were like, I probably should have kept these because like Cardi B is going to get a hold of this and it's going to turn into something, you know?
Yeah. I really think when you start putting nylon and acoustic guitar, and you know what's funny? When I think about it, I don't really hear that in anyone else's packs.
No, we're kind of like and I should say I hear it, but not in the way that we do it, you know?
Yeah, I don't really hear it. And the way that we do it just takes it to a different level because it's still, it's acoustic guitar, but I'm not strumming Kumbaya.
Right.
And the nylon guitar, that just takes it to that's like that bossa nova, Stan Getz. What's that sample? The Far Side. I was listening to that yesterday. Running by Far Side.
Yep.
It just takes it there. So,
and then the other thing too is it's interesting how that like that sound is very much like an organic sound. That's that's real, quote unquote, real hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And music that will stand the test of time. But low key, the nylon guitar had a really, really good run in like the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Pop, R&B, and rap as well too. Like there's a lot of joints. What's that joint with Puffy? This Is What I Need. Him and Mario Winans and
the Jagged Edge.
Is that is Mario Winans on that song?
I don't remember. He could be.
Just someone to truly understand.
You never know who's in the studio.
Yeah, right. He probably wrote that joint low key. Yeah. But
and the other thing where the inspiration for the nylon guitar, at least in the way that we use it, is All This Love by DeBarge. There's a nylon string guitar solo at the end.
Yeah, you took it back, bro.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a few other songs in the 80s that have that kind of guitar solo in it. And then of course like that with the Far Side, and what was that, Dilla and Maya Falling.
Do you think that the nylon guitar is the instrument that makes the soul palatable for everybody? Do you think that's what it is?
Yeah, I think what makes this pack palatable is I really just get into a mind state where I'm not thinking too hard. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Right. I'm pretty much just, when I put the ideas down, I have a way of arranging and composing where things just fit. And I'm not really thinking about making something stand out. So like, remember when I was playing you a bunch of beats, and with a lot of those beats, there was something that would stand out. Like maybe the drums would just be really smacking, right? Or there's like one particular instrument or like one particular sample that kind of like makes the track, It's a different style of production. That's actually a mixing technique. I think it's called masking. So, and this is digressing a little bit too, but I actually learned the name for it a few weeks ago. Masking and mixing is when you give one particular instrument shine, and it makes the mix interesting. So, to me, that's a good technique when you're making music, because it gives the listener something to listen to. When I'm making samples, at least something like this, I kind of want that X factor to be the entire composition.
Right.
Not meaning that everything is standing out, but everything is working together. So when you listen to it, it's one piece and it's moving together, and it's not like you kind of get what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, but you kind of low key giving away all of the cookies and treats.
I'm a little out of breath from that was a long sentence.
Nah.
So I know it's too much.
No, I mean that makes total sense. And yeah, it kind of goes hand in hand with, what we were saying as far as like, some of the greatest tunes, some of the greatest commercial tunes that we've ever heard, doesn't matter the genre, it definitely has that one particular sound that sticks out. You think about in hip hop, one of the most well-known and heard samples of all time by RZA on Cream. You have that whole sample, and there's like a whole lot going on in that sample between the way that the drums smack and the way that, that dissonant drone of that main chord in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But what you really remember is that one lead piano that's just looped over and over and over again. And that's really like the star of the show. You know what I'm saying? So it definitely makes sense that you would pick up that technique. And it's probably why this particular pack, it has this Smythe feel, but it definitely feels different. One of the things that you and I were kind of joking about is I was saying that I could tell that across the board that we were getting like a little tired.
Mm-hmm.
Not that there was like any copied things or anything like that, but I could kind of tell when you guys are like, and even myself, like when we're kind of, I don't want to say sleep at the wheel, but we're definitely like the seat is reclined all the way back and you're eating chips while driving. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to, all the way attentive, gripping the wheel, and really seeing what you're doing. But yeah, like this particular pack, like I felt like, even though I don't think that you felt that way, this had a different sound than things that I've heard from you in quite a while. Mm-hmm. And I was like super proud of what you were able to come up with, man.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. No, it's a different sound. It's definitely a different feel. And when I finished, I was really happy to be done because I wasn't using any synthesizers.
Right.
So there was no roadie.
Right.
There's no
and maybe that's maybe that is like the main thing, is that those guys weren't present in the project like they normally are.
Right.
And that's probably like the huge difference.
Yeah, no, it really puts your musicianship out on display, and how tight you are, and how good your fundamentals are.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's and that's really the feel of doing a session, like being a session musician and being on people's projects. When you go in the studio and you're not recording to quantized drums, you're not quantizing every little thing. It's just musicians in a room creating. You really start to see, all right, so if I want to make music that sounds professional and I'm only using live instruments, which is what we do, as
right
out, which is our sound, you have to really be tight. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes this pack very special, because I mean everything that we do already isn't quantized. We're not super digital with it, but mm-hmm. on top of that, all of the sounds are really organic, and yeah, it just makes for a different experience. I was gonna tell a little anecdote.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember over the summer, one of my friends came over for a session. He's a great producer. We came up in school together, and so we don't really get a chance to work together all that often. But like I've seen his process. He's mostly in the box, but his stuff, that's not taking anything away from him. Like his productions sound great, but he uses Logic and he uses a lot of VSTs. So he came over here, and he was like, "Oh, can you pull up that Rhodes sound?" So I was like, "This is just a pianet,"
right?
And it took him a few tries to get it down. because it will, there, when you're using real stuff, you can't really hide behind, well, let me nudge this. I mean, you can still do that, but it just takes away from the essence when you're nudging audio.
Right.
So I say that to say, yeah, session tapes, I really wanted to capture the feel of actually doing a session and hearing the instruments in a dry but 3D kind of way.
For sure. You definitely achieved it, man. Straight up.
Thank you.
It sounds really good. Looking forward to everybody hearing this new joint, man. Definitely looking forward to hearing what our customers do with this, man. But appreciate you hopping on today, man. We'll catch up soon.
Yes, sir.
All right, peace.
Peace.